Welcome everybody. My name is Angus Wright. I also go by Angus by Design. And this is a practice that I have. It's an ever-evolving practice. But essentially, the nuts and bolts of it is that I like to read a chapter or so from a book. And I started the practice with a couple of Ram Dass books. The first one being How Can I Help? And the second one being Polishing the Mirror. The third book I did in the practice was the Tibetan Book of the Dead for beginners. And now I'm reading a book called Insight Meditation, The Practice of Freedom by Joseph Goldstein. And this book, so Joseph Goldstein continues to teach and to practice and to write and to do all sorts of things. So if anything in the book resonates with you, how I discovered Joseph Goldstein was through podcasting. And if you go to ramdass.org, there's like free podcasts and stuff like that. If you YouTube him, whatever you do, he's all over the place. But essentially, the description here, this book is from the 90s. I also really like looking at material from another time. And seeing how poignant it is in today's world. But Joseph Goldstein is a co-founder of the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, and where he is one of the resident guiding teachers. He is the author of The Experience of Insight, a simple and direct guide to Buddhist meditation, and co-author of Seeking the Heart of Wisdom, the Path of Insight Meditation. So, yeah, and I'm certain he's read and written a lot more since then. The other part of the practice is that I like using tarot cards and oracle cards and cards in general as reflections, as wellness tools. And so what I do is I like to just pull a card after reading. For me, it helps my brain kind of go, okay. Because I have a hard time trusting stuff and just sort of like falling into believing something. I feel like we live in a world where everything feels like a sales pitch, and so part of my practice is just having something else to sort of reflect on in the meantime. So none of this is whoever's listening, like nothing is to sell you a package. It's not to say there's any expectations. The practice is really just sharing space, opening, holding space, and then just, doing what we do. And for me, the result is pretty steadily just having time where I've essentially just put it into doing something different, doing something based in kindness or action, right? So far in the book, here's how far I've gotten. I record, what I do is I download these recordings. I keep them under an hour. I repost them in case anyone wants to see it. If something resonates, then they might, they might want to see or hear more. So I keep them here, and then I keep them on YouTube. So a quote at the beginning is, "The birds have vanished into the sky, and now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountains and me, until only the mountain remains, and that's Li Po. So far we've covered what is the path, the Dharma, fear of enlightenment, intelligence and progress, one taste, Four Noble Truths, signposts, grace or help along the way, the role of a teacher, roads to fulfillment, how to practice, so purpose, effort, and surrender, training the heart, meditation instructions, Nintendo Dharma, acceptance, not seeing dukkha is dukkha, understanding pain, feeling good, feeling bad, progress and meditation, spontaneity and practice, coming home, energy and insight. And then I'm into part 3, freeing the mind, hindrances, a dirty cloth, relating to thoughts, views and opinions, judgment 500. And yesterday I capped it off with conceit and the comparing mind. So I'm going to start with liberating emotions. The next couple ones after that are emotional bondage, emotional freedom, and use your umbrella. And then I'll see if I can get through those, and then we'll pull a card. So the invitation in the moment. So if you want to add a physical component, if you want to practice following your breath. So it's not to try to change it. It's not to try to force it to do something. It's literally just to take note. Take note of how you're breathing. See if you can tune into that. Okay? So liberating emotions. Developing a liberated relationship to thought and all its permutations, such as opinions, judgments, and comparing, is a vital and challenging aspect of our practice. Another great challenge, perhaps greater, is learning to dance skillfully with our emotional life of all the many areas of our experience, both in meditation practice and in the rest of our lives. Emotions are often the most difficult to understand and to be with in a free way. Two factors contribute to this difficulty. So first, emotions as appearances in the mind are amorphous. They have no clear boundaries, no definite sense of beginnings and endings. They are not as tangible as sensations, nor clearly defined as thoughts. Even when we feel them strongly, we may not be able to distinguish amongst them clearly. The second obstruction to our understanding of emotions is the fact that we are deeply conditioned to identify with them. When you are in the midst of some powerful feelings, such as love or anger, excitement or sadness, notice that strong sense of self, of I, that usually comes with it. We can learn relatively easily to see the passing and personal nature of bodily sensations and even thoughts which come and go quickly. But how much harder is it, or how much harder it is to see the impersonal or non-personal nature of emotions? Indeed, to many people, the notion of non-personal emotions may even seem an oxymoron, a contradiction in terms. Emotions are often seen to be the most personal aspect of our experience. So is there another way of understanding the rich, complex, and varied terrain of our emotional world? There are 3 steps in working with emotions that might lead us to a new experience of them. The first step is taking care to recognize precisely each emotion as it arises and to learn to distinguish amongst subtle differences. So at one time in my practice, I went through a period of feeling strong sadness. It seemed to go on for days. I observed the emotion mindfully, noting sadness, but something about the experience felt quite stuck. After some time, I began to look at this feeling more carefully, to observe it more closely. I discovered that it was not sadness at all. And thank you, TT. It was the feeling of unhappiness. These two emotions seem close in nature, but actually they are quite different when you observe them precisely. As soon as I was able to recognize what was actually happening, the wave of feeling began to pass through. Until we see each emotion for what it is, we cannot come to full acceptance of it. And so we stay slightly out of alignment with what is happening and perhaps end up feeling stuck. So there are other times when emotions are so unpleasant, so uncomfortable, that we do not allow ourselves to acknowledge them at all. Instead, we seek ways, consciously or unconsciously, to avoid feeling them. This pattern of denial can happen with feelings of fear, shame, anxiety, loneliness, rage, boredom, embarrassment, and many others. We find ourselves trying in every way imaginable to change the situation rather than simply to be with the feeling. How much and what kinds of things do we do in our lives just so that we do not have to feel bored or lonely or afraid? Not opening to the range of emotions, not understanding that they will arise and pass away by themselves, compels us to actions that may not actually bring us happiness, but may rather keep us continually on the run. Many destructive addictions might be prevented by practicing the willingness simply to feel the unpleasantness of painful emotions. Recognizing and acknowledging emotions as they arise, particularly the difficult ones, allows us to open to them so that we can experience what the old Taoist called the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Another aspect of recognizing emotions is seeing that often they come in clusters or constellations. We may be aware of the most predominant feeling, yet we may miss the feelings that are underneath it. And feeding it like underground springs. So for example, we may feel strong anger and be quite mindful of it, but we may not catch a certain self-righteousness that goes along with it. As long as we remain unaware of such associated states, the emotional fellow travelers, we may stuck in a painful emotion for quite some time. Clear recognition and acceptance of different emotions that arise in our experience lead us to the second important step in working with strong emotions. Our Western culture does not much value this method, although it is one of the foundations for happiness in our lives. So I'm referring to the ability to discriminate wisely between wholesome and unwholesome emotions or states of mind. The measure for making this distinction is simple. Does this mind state or emotion create suffering for ourselves or others, or does it create happiness and peace? So some states of mind are obviously either skillful or unskillful. Skillful in the Buddhist sense refers to that which leads to happiness, to freedom, and unskillful to that which leads to suffering. Few would disagree that greed or hatred or ignorance are undesirable states, or that generosity, love, and compassion and understanding are worthy ones. Sometimes, though, the distinctions are subtle, difficult to make, especially when unwholesome emotions or states of mind masquerade as wholesome ones. We might mistake sorrow or grief or even outrage for a feeling of compassion. Or we might confuse the feeling of indifference with that of equanimity. They look alike, but they are really quite different with different consequences. So often in our society, we hear and read that we need to honor our emotions, which is certainly true in the sense of recognizing, accepting, and opening to them. But that by itself is not enough. We also need to take the next step to investigate whether a particular state is skillful or not. So is it bringing happiness and freedom, or is it bringing more suffering? Do we want to cultivate it or let it go? We always have this choice, although we often fail to exercise it. This quality of wise discrimination can empower us tremendously. We can rarely control what emotions come into our mind and heart, but once they are there, we can acquire the freedom to relate to them in different ways. If we are unaware either of what emotion is present or of whether it is wholesome or unwholesome, then we can simply act out all our old patterns of conditioning. This may keep us entangled, indifferent, or in suffering, even as we are wanting happiness. When we are aware of both of these aspects, we create the possibility for wise choice and inner freedom. So the third step in working with emotions is both the most difficult and the most liberating. That step is learning, even as we open to the whole range of feelings, not to identify with them. Identifying with the emotion, that sense of being self, being I, is extra. Notice the feeling of contraction when you identify strongly with various mind states we all experience. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm anxious. These moments of identification are a habituated add-on, a convention that causes a lot of heartache and pain. From a meditative perspective, various mind states, including emotions, arise and pass away, empty of any substantial nature. They come into being when certain conditions come together and disappear, when the conditions change. So none of them belong to anyone. They are not happening to anyone. In a very real sense, each mind state or emotion is expressing itself. It is desire that desires, fear that fears, love that loves. It is not you or I. Can you feel the difference between the experience of I am angry and the experience of this is anger? Through that little distinction flows a whole world of freedom. Of course, it is extremely important not to use the idea of selflessness as a vehicle for denial. True selflessness comes from openness and acceptance. As one Tibetan Buddhist text expresses it, mind states or emotions are like clouds in the sky, without roots, without home. Identifying with an emotion as being self is like trying to tether a cloud. Can we learn to liberate all emotions, all phenomena, letting them pass through the open sky of the heart and mind? So welcome everyone. If you're just tuning in, I'm just reading from the Insight Meditation, The Practice of Freedom book. It's just a practice that I have. To be straight up honest, I live with the ADHD. I'm a man of 49 years old, turning 50 soon. And for a very long time, I just simply couldn't read books. And so part of my practice in the last couple months has been to make it a goal to read a chapter a day at least, right? And so me being extra and the most, I do it live on TikTok. So we're just reading from the book, and then I'm going to pull a card for reflection and inspiration. So this is just a practice. It's an invitation for you to just engage in any way that you want. There's no expectation. Emotional bondage and emotional freedom. So, well, you might ask, I see the value of not identifying with emotions, not making them I, but how do I actually do it? Doing it is not easy. It is so easy to get caught up in emotions, lost in their energy, lost in thoughts about them. Through the entanglement of identification, we create a strong sense of self, of I. I'm so angry, I'm so sad or happy or whatever. Our great challenge and potential is to learn how to stay open to the whole range of feeling without adding to this extra sense of I and mine in the midst of it. One practical device that often helps is to see three things going on in the midst of strong emotion. So when we become angry, for example, first there is some external situation prompting the anger to arise. Something is doing or saying something that we do not like or we feel is harmful to ourselves or others. Second, there is our reaction to that situation, namely the feelings of anger. And the third component is the relationship of our mind to anger itself. So usually we're lost in the first two, the external situation and our reaction to it. Something happens, we get angry. As we get angry, we start thinking about what happened. All those thoughts create more anger, which in turn creates more thoughts about the situation. Often with blame, self-righteousness, and hurt feelings. Thus, we quickly become caught in a destructive loop. So if you seek a way out of such cycles, try turning your attention away from the situation and your reaction to it and towards the third component, the relationship of your mind to the emotion, whether it is anger, fear, or whatever. So for example, in the midst of the whirlwind of anger, you might ask yourself, how am I getting caught in this anger? How am I getting hooked by it? How am I identifying with it? Asking some form of that question is completely different from considering the external situation. So at such a time, we are no longer sending out threads of blame that bind us to the situation, to the reaction, and to our identification with the emotion. We're no longer thinking about the external causes of the anger, so we are no longer feeding it. We also do not ask the question for the purpose of getting an answer or having an intellectual response. Rather, the question's purpose is to help us change perspective or take responsibility for what arises in our mind. In the movement of asking, how am I getting hooked? We have already moved outside of the anger and are looking at the way that we are relating to it. It is possible in the moment for a whole mass of anger to dissolve without our denying it, repressing it, or shoving it away. Once at our meditation center in Barrie, Mass, I became very angry at someone for doing something I felt quite harmful. The anger was very intense, and I was noting anger, anger, anger. My whole body was vibrating. It went on for many hours. Every time I thought about the situation, the anger became stronger. I went to sleep feeling this way, and the intensity of that emotion and its effects on my body woke me very early in the morning. It was so startling to awaken to the same level of intense, angry energy that I began to ask myself, what's happening here? How am I getting so hooked into this feeling? At that point, I was not asking these questions mechanically. I really wanted to see what was going on, why my mind was so caught, so identified with the anger. In the very moment of asking these questions, the shifting my perspective, my whole body became softer and the anger disappeared. It was like magic. Later that day, I talked to the person at whom I had felt so angry. We were able to communicate about the problem in an easy and productive way because the anger and blame were no longer there. So it was not that we avoid dealing with the external situation. Rather, if we can become clear in our own minds and hearts first, then the resolution can come more easily. Probably you will not perfect this simple way to disidentify with painful emotions the first time you try it. Like any practice, we need to hone it through interest and repetition. But each time we cut through the chains of our identification, we experience a great freedom. The mind again becomes spacious and accepting. Next time you're caught up in a strong, painful emotional state, try asking yourself these three things. What is the external situation? What is my reaction to it, the emotion I'm feeling? What is my relationship to this emotion? How am I getting hooked? Step by step, situation by situation, we can learn how it feels to be free. So this is reading from the Insight Meditation, The Practice of Freedom by Joseph Goldstein, which is pretty cool. A couple of the quotes here. This is from 1994. What was I doing in 94? Oh, I was 18 years old. in 1994. So I was up to some shenanigans. I'm sure of it. Insight meditation will be welcomed by all those who wish to extend and deepen their commitment to a life of mindfulness. And that's by John Kabat-Zinn, author of Wherever You Go, There You Are. I love that sentiment. This is a wonderful and compassionate book. Natalie Goldberg, author of Writing Down the Bones. And it says, the fruit of some 20 years experience leading Buddhist meditation retreats. This book touches on a wide range of topics raised repeatedly by meditators and includes favorite stories, key Buddhist teachings, and answers to the most asked questions. I'm realizing my eyebrows are ridiculously long. I gotta see my barber. But that's my life in this moment. Next up is going to be use your umbrella. No, don't listen to me. Use your umbrella is going to be the next. And then we're going to pull a card from this deck and reflect on it. So welcome, everyone. So far, we've had 93 folks fly through here and 131 hearts, which is really great. I'm a Reiki practitioner, so I've been a Reiki master since 2007. So the process to become a Reiki master, number one is, step one is to learn what is Reiki, what is it all about. Reiki is Japanese for universal life energy. I'm taught through the lineage of Dr. Mikao Usui. He was an academic back in his time, and he highly intelligent person. And then he traveled to India and different areas to learn what spirituality meant and how it applied to our lives. Now we have research and science to back up that for our mental wellness and our overall well-being, having a sense of spirituality, whether it's like a specific religion or not religious, it could simply be having a higher concept of ourself, right? So having a positive self-image, having a connection to Reiki actually improves our lives. It makes us a little bit happier. It makes us a little bit more functional. And so anyway, going back, so Reiki was, and then stage 2 is learning how to do it on others. So when I learned level 2 Reiki, I was then able to practice it on others. Now, I couldn't say I was an expert in any way. It was just practice, and it was still learning. And so really that is, step 1 is to connect with self. Step 2 is to connect with others. And then when I became a Reiki master, that's level 3. So not only can I provide treatments for Reiki or practice for Reiki or do guided Reiki or do self Reiki or whatever, but I can also instruct others. I can also pass that on. And so Reiki is it is rooted in evidence-based practice. It was developed by a person who was highly intelligent, but then also had the lived experience of learning from other cultures and areas. And Dr. Mikao Usui, who founded Reiki as a practice, he basically developed it in order to teach his students how to connect their mind, so their thoughts, with their minds, with their emotions, and then how to actually be able to sit within themselves to be in their bodies. And so it's really a great sort of system for folks who, like me, might experience chronic pain or might experience mental health or what have you. right? So that's why I like it as a principle. And again, all of this is universal. So let's see here. I'm gonna try to bring us up to, so the next, it's use your umbrella, fear itself, and thank you, boredom. So I'm going to try to get those 3 little bits out of the way and then pull a card. So use your umbrella. So there are different ways of dealing with experiences of overwhelming emotion when we do not have the time or space to observe and investigate. So sometimes a retreat from the situation is the most skillful response. We back off, we cool off a little, and then if the situation persists, go back and try to communicate with the person or people with whom we experience trouble. It is also useful to realize that many things are out of our control. One of my teachers told me something very early on in my practice that has been tremendously helpful ever since. It has saved me a lot of suffering. He said, you can't take charge of other people's minds. You can take charge of your own mind. Although we can try to communicate clearly and skillfully with other people, feel compassion for their suffering, and work to alleviate it, still, in the end, we cannot control our actions or our reactions. When we understand this fact, it becomes a little easier to let go. As the quality of equanimity grows in our mind, then we are more able to be with unpleasant or disagreeable situations without our own mind becoming agitated. We learn to respond rather than react. And there are some circumstances that do call for a forceful response. We do not always have to be passive and accepting in every predicament. Sometimes we might have to use our umbrella. Sharon Salzberg, a friend and teaching colleague, had a frightening experience years ago when we were both first practicing meditation in India. She and another friend had been in Calcutta with one of our teachers, Dipama. When they left her, they hired a rickshaw to go to the train station. As they took a shortcut through a dark back alley, a man leapt at them violently and started to pull Sharon out of the rickshaw. It was a very scary moment. Sharon's friend finally managed to push the attacker away, and they escaped to the station unharmed. When they arrived back in Bodh Gaya, where we were all staying, Sharon told our teacher, Munandraji, what had happened. He listened carefully to all the details. At the end of the story, Munandraji said, "Oh dear, with all the loving kindness in your heart, you should have taken your umbrella and hit the man over the head." Sometimes that is what we need to do. It would be easy enough to hit the man over the head with the umbrella. The difficult part would be to do it with all the loving kindness in our heart. So that's our real practice. That quality of being firm and decisive, of using the umbrella when nothing else avails, is something that we can use in meditation too, though it must be used with care and precision. When something unskillful in the mind keeps coming back again and again, we can find that strong and decisive place in our mind, and from there take a firm position not to get caught. It is as if we take out our umbrella our sword of wisdom and say, enough or not now. This bold action in the mind is not about avoidance or shoving away something unpleasant because we do not want to experience it. If we do it, we must do it with the feeling of loving kindness, not with aversion. That is where people often make a mistake. They take out their sword of anger or they take out their sword of anger instead of their sword of discriminating wisdom. Wisdom says this mind state or emotion is unskillful, unwholesome. I've seen it many times already. Now I let it go. We always need to find the right balance in order for any skillful means to be truly skillful. Often people are so judgmental and condemning of things in themselves and others that they need most to soften, to accept, to let things be. But it is also important to explore that place of strength and resolve in the mind, the place of the warrior within us, so that we can use our growing power to cut through unskillful states in appropriate and loving ways. Just taking a look. Fear itself. Thank you, boredom. I'm going to try to... Okay, so fear itself. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Wait a minute here. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first words as president to his beleaguered country are the ones for which he is still most remembered. They remain familiar to many of us who were born years after they were spoken. The memorable power of Roosevelt's words lies in the reminding Americans that the most formidable danger was not in the external circumstances of the Great Depression, but rather in the forces of working in their own minds. As meditators, we might pursue this understanding even further. Must we fear fear itself? How much of our creative and vital power is tied up, sometimes even paralyzed by our fear of fear, our unwillingness to feel it and to know it for what it is? It would be difficult to overestimate the potential power of fear to control our lives. This mind state has extraordinary range of expression, from mild worry to chronic anxiety and abject terror. It can contract our mind and body and cripple our will. And not only is a fear of great power in itself, it is also too often provides hidden motive energy to many other states that causes pain. Behind every act of greed lies fear of deprivation. Behind hatred and aggression lies fear of harm. Behind so much delusion lies fear of knowing and feeling painful conditions. Do you get some sense of why working skillfully with fear can be a significant liberating act? By going beyond our fear of fear and by unmasking fear itself, we not only free ourselves from fear's own deliberating force, but we also reduce the force of many other mental conditions that depend on it as the source of much of their power. Mindfulness practice begins to open up everything. We open up our mind to memories, to emotions, to different sensations in the body. In meditation, this happens in a very organic way because we're not searching, we're not pulling or probing. We're just sitting and watching. In the safe context of a retreat and in their own time, which is the right time, things start to emerge. The fear of fear, many of those memories, thoughts, emotions, sensations we have been afraid to experience. We begin to allow ourselves to fear it all. And these things start to come up, and we feel consciously and mindfully with a sense of softness and acceptance. Less and less energy is required to hold them down. Wow. Okay, so the energy in our system begins to flow in a much freer way. And then we look around and we notice that there's less fear. We have faced what we have feared, we have survived it, we even feel fine. Fear cannot survive the end of avoidance and denial. It begins to lose its domain. The practice helps in another way. Many years ago, I sat a Zen session or meditation retreat with Joshu Sasaki Roshi, a fierce and demanding Zen master. It was an intense session for me in that it touched in me a place of deepest fear. I felt primal fear so strong that I was sometimes even afraid to move. I worked with that fear throughout the session, and although the full intensity of it abated afterwards, the deep-rooted feeling of it lasted for months. I was walking around in a space of fear, and I started relating to myself as being a fearful person. I felt the fear like a knot in the core of my being, and I thought I would have to work on it for years in order to untie it. Months later, while a colleague and I were teaching a retreat in Texas, the two of us were walking around the retreat site. I was going on and on about my fear, about everything I had to do, and about what a huge burden it was. She finally turned to me and said something that I myself have said so many times to others. It's only a state of mind. That was just the right moment for me to hear those words. Had she said them a week earlier, they might not have had the same impact. But in that exact moment, the reminder opened me to the perspective that the fear truly did not belong to anybody. It was not attached to or part of an I or me. It was just a mind state. It was there, and it would go away. There was nothing I had to do about it except to let it be. During all that time, even though I had been observing it in some way, I had not been aware that I felt an aversion towards the fear. Because of that aversion, there was always a negative identification with it. In the moment of actually realizing that fear is just a mind state, the whole thing disappeared. I do not mean that fear never came back to me again, but from time to time, from that time on, I saw it much more easily. An emotion is like a cloud passing in the sky. Sometimes it is fear or anger, sometimes it's happiness or love, sometimes it's compassion, but none of them ultimately constitute a self. They are just what they are, each manifesting its own quality. With this understanding, we can cultivate the emotions that seem helpful and simply let the others be without aversion, without suppression, without identification. Fear, depression, despair, unworthiness, we just watch and we feel. It could take a long time for the process to loosen. Or it could be a moment's sudden understanding. Oh yes, just a mind state. Perhaps people have worked with these emotions very successfully, although it often takes a lot of patience. Muninandraji, one of my first Dharma teachers, used to say that in spiritual practice, time is not a factor. Practice cannot be measured in time. So let it go, or let go of the whole notion of when and how long. The practice is a process unfolding, and it unfolds in its own time. It is like the flowers that grow in the spring. Do you pull them up to make them grow faster? I once tried to do that with carrots in my first garden when I was 8 years old. It does not work. We do not need any particular length of time for this process of letting things be. Why not do it now? So I'm going to finish there because I want to wrap this up in the next 9 minutes. But we'll be going into thank you, boredom, unworthiness, guilt, jealousy. Ooh, this is going to get dishy. Desire. Oh my gosh. That's what's left in part 3 of this book. I'm excited to see what comes of that. But in this moment, so seeing 133 folks pass through here in just this last 51 minutes of practice. These are cards that are part of the Gaia Oracle Guidebook. This is dedicated to Gaia, the goddess of Earth. My muse and inspiration is through her love, grace, and wisdom that my work comes into existence. And that's written by Tony Carmine Salerno, who's an intuitive artist and author born in Melbourne, Australia. Anyway, I don't do Australian accents very well. His often emotionally charged works explore and reflect the spirituality inherent within nature, our universe and humanity. Gaia, goddess of the earth, the feminine, is his constant source of inspiration. So her beauty, love, and wisdom are reflected in all of his work, regardless of the subject matter. So what I love is that this is a tool that's created by an artist that allows for reflection. So this is dedicated. I use it as a tool for discernment. So I like to add it to what I just read and to see, what resonated with me. We're living in a time that's very interesting, to say the least. And it's only going to get more interesting, to be straight up, right? So it's always about who the hell are we? What the hell are we doing? Who's around us? What is influencing us? Oi, that one jumped out. So I'll just choose this one. Oh, reflection, my gosh. Illusion, self-examination, and distortion, card number 13. All right. Let's see what it says. I've got about 6 minutes to wrap this up. So just for reference, about the Gaia, so the word oracle, which signifies prophecy, stems from the ancient Greece or Rome. An oracle was traditionally a shrine where, through the medium of a priest or a priestess, the gods and goddesses were consulted and prophetic advice was sought. So the oracle is any person or thing believed to indicate further action. It says how to use the cards. So sit quietly with the cards in your hands. Visualize white light of the universe flowing into the room. And a 1-card reading says choose 1 card, and this will give you your message for the day or give clarity of a situation or a question. So that's why I like to use it as a practice in what I just read for discernment. So card 13, reflection, which ironically is reflecting my window. Oh, that's pretty. Illusion, self-examination, and distortion. So what you see around you mirrors what you feel within you. The chaos you perceive or experience in your physical reality simply reflects your inner chaos and turmoil. If things are not working well in your outer world, what is it that is not working well within you? This card calls for a thorough self-examination. Do not merely skim the surface. You must delve deep to uncover the truth. This will take time, patience, and commitment. Observe your thoughts and feelings throughout the day and make a note of negative or unconstructive thoughts and feelings. This practice over time will in itself help heal and restore balance in your life. It may be helpful to keep a diary in which you note your thoughts and feelings. What is it that triggers these thoughts and feelings? Journal writing will also help, provided that the journal is for your eyes only. It may also be helpful to seek professional advice from a qualified counselor or health practitioner who has experience in this field. Commitment to this reflective journey, be disciplined in your approach, and you will never look back. The rewards will be greater than you ever imagined. And the affirmation here is, my heart is full of love and light. All is well within my world. I feel the peace within me. And this creates peace around me. I observe all I think and feel. Each negative thought or feeling is automatically transformed to love. So that is the reflection card in the Gaia Oracle. And this has been a practice of reading from the book Insight Meditation. I'm going to take another minute to just talk about what I'm about. You might see this little monkey looking in a mirror. I really love to learn from the teachings of Ram Dass, who was born Richard Alpert. And if you know of anybody who was around in the 60s and 70s, or you know anything about the sort of culture of the time, Ram Dass was someone who went over to India, met someone named Neem Karoli Baba, otherwise known as Maharaji, but he was also just on a spiritual journey. He wanted to learn. Now, he was doing so at a time when he was using LSD and doing all sorts of stuff. And so he came back and he wrote the book Be Here Now and yada, yada, yada. And many moons later, there's an organization and many lectures that he had about, how do we make peace and connection. So if you visit ramdas.org, you can learn more about that. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'll see you all soon. Thank you for joining, and for all the hearts. I'll see you tomorrow, and check out the recordings.